Hello, everyone. This is Rosie, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of my podcast called My Intrusive Thoughts. First of all, I want to wish you guys a very happy, blissful Eid. I know I'm like a week late, but I hope that you've had a safe, fun-filled, a lot of sweet-filled Eid, and that you got to spend some time with your loved ones, your family, or friends, and that it was a nice time because, Eids are always special, and I hope that you guys had a good one. I really enjoyed myself. I got to spend some time with my family and dress up and eat a lot of nice food, so I was really happy. And I did not post an episode last week because originally I had planned to record like a review for D-Day album when it dropped, and it was dropping on last Friday 21st April. So I thought I would be able to maybe listen to the album and also record the episode and then have it up, but it just was impossible, also because it was the Eid weekend. So I just wanted to spend some time with my family, and that is why I waited so that I could listen to the album, you know, and interpret everything on my own. And I think it was a good decision because we got the Higam MV on Friday, but we also got Amygdala MV recently. Then we had Shochwita, and then we had Road to D-Day, the documentary on Disney. So there was a lot of stuff to kind of go through to form like an opinion about this. Like I felt like watching all of that and reading all the interviews that he's done, it was a better it gave me a better insight into this album and what he wanted. And he even did like a D-Day live explaining things and the process for the album last night actually, which I kind of missed because I was studying, but I kind of went through the translations on Twitter later on because reading the translations was a lot easier than sitting through the live. I mean, I'm probably gonna go back and watch the live anyways, but just saying. When I was thinking of recording this, I had like a whole outline in my head because I'd already done an album review for Jimin, Face album, but when I started writing the notes, I kind of sort of dived into this, rabbit hole of Yoongi and his artistry and his music and him and everything to do with it, and I ended up with like a lot of information. Like it's so much information, and I'm trying to kind of comb through things to pick only the things that I think are related for this episode. I would love to do like a in-depth sort of episode just talking about Min Yoongi, and his craftsmanship and his music and him as a person, because this man is, a lot of things. He has a lot of different sides to him, and it's interesting. It's very fascinating. He's, I think, one of the most complicated people that I have seen, and in a good way. I love the intricacies of his personality because they make him who he is, and they're the reason why I love him the way I do. And also because that makes him that much more an essential part of BTS. So, who are we talking about? I mean, I've talked about him already so much, but let me just give you a what do you call it? Like a proper professional introduction to who I'm talking about. So we're gonna be talking about Min Yoongi, singer, producer, composer, writer, lyricist, everything that could think of. This man is a genius. We call him Genius Meow Meow. There's a whole cat agenda. I'm not gonna go into this. If you're an army, you would know what I'm talking about right now. So yes, he's part of BTS. He's part of the rap line, and He does all sorts of things. He composes music, he writes lyrics, he raps, and he is an amazing artist, okay? He can dance. He's an all-rounder, and that's exactly what you would expect from a BTS member, okay? So there it is. That's who we're talking about today. And specifically, this man has different personas that he goes by. A lot of people know him differently um, through his music because he has had different aliases throughout his career to represent different aspects of his music, which is a genius move, I would say. And today we're going to be talking about Agust D. So let's get into it. I guess before I talk about this album, D Day, it's very imperative for us to kind of look back on his previous albums as Agust D to be able to understand what this album means. And I feel like when this album dropped, and a lot of people who had not heard the previous albums, it was kind of hard for them to understand what was going on. D Day is something of like a finale to a trilogy that was going on for a few years. It's a story. And coming from Yoongi, if there's one thing that you need to know about this man, it is that he likes to build a world, even if it's BTS, you know even if it's other artists that he's working with. He always likes to leave little you know stories and anecdotes in his songs that sort of make them more personal to you. You would not just expect him to be talking about trivial things. And I know that sometimes that's all you want from a music you know album or a song or anything, but not with Min Yoongi. He always likes to go deep into things. And one example is Savage Love, if you guys have heard that. It was a very a very light, happy-go-lucky song that you could vibe to, and then bam, BTS gets involved, and it's all about sandcastles and forever, and the deeper meaning of love and all that. And that's exactly what Yoongi is. He is the kind of person who is going to give a more special meaning to just ordinary things. I think that's how I can put it. He's the kind of person who's going to, touch a normal thing and turn it into something extraordinary. So, like I was saying, we have to talk about his previous works as Agust D before we get to, talking about D Day. So, where does it all start? Basically, Agust D stands for D Town, which is his hometown, Daegu Town, and Suga reversed. So, that's where the Agust D comes from, if you didn't know. And this persona, as told by Yoongi in a lot of interviews and the documentaries, and he said it multiple times lately, that the reason he created this persona was to be able to talk about music through his own perspective. He needed an outlet where he did not have to think about other people and what they thought, or be restricted by company, or his idol image, or the fact that he was part of a band. Because as Suga of BTS, he always had to consider you know the position of other members on songs. So as you work with a team, you have to sometimes compromise. You have to adjust. And when he was producing songs for other people, obviously if you're working for another artist, you have to keep in mind what they want, so it has to be on their conditions, and you have to keep their perspective in your mind. So for him, he needed another vent, a source where he could just talk about himself, talk about things that he wanted to talk about without having to consider all these other things. And so he created Agust D. And it has been an amazing journey to watch Agust D kind of become the person he is today. And obviously it's Min Yoongi essentially. But this persona, this alias of his took kind of like a life of its own and became like, I would call it a legend, because the kind of things that Agust D brought out, his first mixtape, which is called Agust D, and then D2, and now D-Day. The kind of things that this person, this side of Yoongi, has expressed through this music. I don't think that I've ever seen any artist do that. I mean, a lot of people get sort of, bound by different things, restrictions, limitations. What would the, audience think? Oh my god. When you're part of BTS, like a global band who is representing the youth all over, they're so heavily involved with social issues and, political issues and stuff like that. So there's a lot going with them, and they have a certain image now in the eyes of the audience. So for him to have that courage to bring out something so personal, so raw, and be so vulnerable in that sort of attention, it blows my mind, and I respect him so much for doing this, for keeping that, you know, I don't know, that part of him that, has not been affected by all the fame or the stardom, no matter what, or where he is in life. The fact that he does music because he wants to, because he loves it. And it has stayed true even now, after so long, after having achieved, I think, all the goals that he probably had set for himself when he began, and more that he keeps, achieving. It's a very incredible feat in my opinion. So all the more respect to him for that. So I guess we gotta start with Agust D, which is a mixtape which came out in 2016. Yoongi said, in some interviews recently that 2016, 2015 was the time when their career was kind of, kickstarting, and they very quickly kind of blew up, I would like to say. They debuted in 2013, right? And then till 2016, they were just kind of being treated like underdogs. And there was like a lot of bullying happening and a lot of snubbing happening. But then, they won their first day song in 2016. And from then on, it was just miraculous. They were doing new things every day, and it just all kind of snowballed real quick. And I feel like that in itself was a big change that kind of, I feel like it must have been hard to kind of wrap your head around, because you've been preparing for this time, you've been thinking, you've been dreaming of this, and then suddenly it's there, and now you don't know what to do. And that's exactly what he said. If you go through, Agust D and you listen to that, you see that Agust D, 2016, this dude was angry. This dude had a lot of resentment. This dude had a lot of frustration, and a lot of negative feelings towards, people, and towards the hands that him as a person and him as a band member of BTS were dealt with. So there's a lot of, regrets and sadness for the past that you will get to see. That's a recurring theme in Agust D. And I feel like the lyrics of this mixtape themselves are something that have become taglines and very famous on their own, just because of how, raw and vulnerable they were, and just how angry and frustrated, like you could feel it. You listen to Agust D and you're reminded of that time yourself. If you've been in army, you would know what I'm talking about right now. And you would kind of like, there's this whole movie that plays in your head, and you see all these things happen. And obviously this is just a glimpse into what went behind the scenes for Yoongi, but they give you a pretty accurate idea of the kind of life artists have to live through behind the scenes, and away from the crowd, away from the spotlight, and what it takes to make an artist, what kind of sacrifices and what kind of troubles they have to go through just to be able to, make it out there. And he's probably not the only person who's gone through this, obviously, but it takes a lot of courage to speak about it, to acknowledge it. And I think that is one of the reasons why Agust D is forever going to be a legend and a hero for us because he brought these topics to light. In this mixtape, he also talks about his personal, traumas and things that he has gone through. And I feel like my favorite song, I've talked about it on Twitter as well, but my favorite song is So Far Away, which is a very insightful gateway into the life of somebody who has struggled so much, lost so much to be where he is, just so, just so that he can, work and chase that dream of his that he is so obsessed with. And yes, it's almost obsessive the way he thinks of, music for himself at this stage in life. And the lyrics, they reflect that, sadness, they reflect that depression, they reflect that anxiety, they reflect that, you know the feeling of being choked up with fear and uncertainty. And it gets to you. I don't know, I think the best way to listen to this song, because listening to BTS is always an experience, you know and I feel like, especially for Yoongi, his lyrics are just, they always blow my mind. So I remember that when I first heard this song, I was going through a very dark time, and one of the reasons why I really got into BTS was actually this song, So Far Away. And I guess it was because of the lyrics and how they spoke to me. I was going through a time where I did not know what my life would turn out like. I was obsessed with the future. I regretted the past. I was constantly comparing myself to everybody around me, and I just felt like a failure. And this song just reflected those feelings. This song just made me feel like somebody had sort of, sucked out all these negative thoughts out of my head and penned them on a piece of paper, and then somehow it turned into a song. Because how can a person feel and know exactly how I feel? And this song was that. And I remember I would just, sit in a dark room, have my earphones on, put the song on full volume, and just listen to it on repeat. Because it was such a heartbreaking song that really put things into perspective for me. I felt heard. I felt seen. I felt like somebody else out there had felt this, had gone through what I had gone through. And just because of that, it brought me a lot of comfort, I would say. So I guess, yeah, that's my favorite song off of this mixtape. But overall, this entire mixtape is a lyrical gem, in my opinion. All of BTS works are, in some way or another, but especially Min Yoongi, because he just has this way with words and with emotions. The way he is so crisp, so on point. The way he just knows how to word these emotions, how to translate these feelings into words. I have never seen somebody do that so beautifully and so heartbreakingly. Like, you feel happy and you feel elated by the fact that somebody could put words to these feelings, but at the same time, it just breaks your heart because now they are out there. Somebody has voiced them. So it's a very, it's an experience, I would say. And yeah, that was Agust D Part 1. And next we had D2. Okay, this mixtape came out in 2020, and as we all know, this was the time when the pandemic hit us out of nowhere. And it was a surprise for everybody. And according to Yoongi, this album was supposed to be like a, reflection of the things that he had gone through, but as a 28-year-old. And he wanted to sort of look back and kind of, rethink these moments and sort of reevaluate what was going on. So you would see that this album is, I keep saying album, it's a mixtape. So this mixtape is a lot less, I would say, angry and kind of angst filled compared to Agust D, but it was still there. He was still angry. He was still, frustrated, but at the same time, it's introspective. You see a lot of, times where he is thinking to himself, and you would see that in his lyrics, he is trying to analyze things better. He's trying to look past the hurt, past the negative feelings, and trying to make sense of what was actually going on. And he's still lost. He still doesn't know what is gonna happen. And uh, in this mixtape, especially now that BTS is a bigger brand and they've achieved so much, he has gained that freedom and that fame and that stardom. Now you'll see a lot of introspection and sort of thoughts of, what to do next. Now that everything that he had dreamt of has come true, what next? And I feel like that is a much harder question to answer than the question of what should I look for, because looking for something, working for something, you have sort of an incentive to do things, to put in effort. But once you achieve that, the idea of keeping it going, the idea of living with it and coming to terms with the fact that you don't have to work anymore to get there because you're already there, it feels like it's a lot more scary. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that's the kind of theme that this mixtape has. And it really reflects in his song Moonlight, where he says that sometimes I feel like I'm a genius, sometimes I feel like I have no talent. And that really puts into perspective the idea that even artists who you feel like have it all, you don't know the kind of process, the uglier side of things, of the process of being perfect, right? So in my eyes, Min Yoongi as a person, Min Yoongi as an artist, Min Yoongi as a musician is amazing, a genius. But I don't really know the kind of effort, the kind of tears he's cried, the kind of, anger and frustration he's felt making this very album that I'm talking about. So it's really nice to see these reflections of his emotions and his feelings and his thoughts through his music. And I loved this album for that, because it also kind of makes you understand the fact that life is not easy for anybody. I mean, it's a very comforting thought, I would say. For some people it would probably sound weird, but the idea that no matter who you are, Barack Obama, you could be BTS, everybody is going through some circumstances, their own set of struggles, and we just gotta find the strength and the confidence to go through these things, right? And just watching Yoongi do this is inspiring in itself. And I feel like it would be a sin if I don't talk about Deshwita at this point because that was hands down the star of this mixtape. And this is basically the, what would you call it? Like, the climax? Not the climax. I think it was that one last push where it just sort of, the highest note before it all starts to fall apart kind of thing. So it was Agust D pushing that rock up the hill and him getting at the top. So this is where he is at in this MV and in the song, where he talks about the fact that he has it all. He's the king, he's the boss, and everybody knows his name. And he's flexing, and I love it for him. I love it for him. And he's talking about his rivals, and he's in his form. He is in that zone where as an artist he's proud of himself and he feels like he can boast about it, and he has all the right to boast about it. And then he goes on and talks about how the world is, from this point, this perspective where he is at now, it feels like he's the king. And The envy, on the other hand, is a whole other story. So basically, there is this blonde Agust D king with the scar on his eye, and then there's another black-haired Yoongi, Agust D, who also has that scar. But in the Semwi, but the story goes that the king is a tyrant, and the black-haired Yoongi is, we don't know if he's the bad guy or the good guy, but he is going to eventually kill this king. We can infer from this is that this is Yoongi trying to kill that tyrant part of him, that dark part of him. So we see him sort of bring out a gun and shoot the blonde king. And we don't know if he dies or not, but we know that he tries. And that just in itself shows that he's trying to get rid of that part of himself. And it was very deep. It was like we saw a lot of different takes on Twitter by different armies trying to infer what that meant. So that was where we at. And now finally, we get on to the last part of this trilogy, which is called D-Day. And, you know, we've gone through the previous two mixtapes, and this is actually a solo album, and this is the fourth album by a BTS member since the chapter 2 started. We've had J-Hope in the Box by J-Hope, we've had Indigo by RM, we've had Face by Jimin, and now we have had D-Day by Min Yoongi and by Agust D. Now, as we've talked about before, this whole trilogy was basically a journey of Agust D sort of coming to terms, acknowledging, and then coming to terms with all these feelings, all these frustrations, all these traumas, all these stories that he's had locked up in his heart that he did not have a way of talking about. And this is him finally, you know, being able to talk about them, being able to share it with others, and to seek out, I don't know, help in a way. Because I feel like for an artist, the best way to connect with people is through their music, right? So in doing so, in being so vulnerable, in being so open with armies, with people about his past, his traumas, his regrets, his sadness, his depression, his fight with, you know, his inner self, all of that, just showing that to us, just making us a part of that, is sort of like a two-way thing where he's trying to help us and also help himself by letting go of all of that. And it's beautiful. It's been a beautiful journey to watch this happen. Now, according to Yoongi, he said that the idea of this album was liberation. He wanted to basically make an album that talked about being in the present, not being held back by the past or being shackled by the idea and uncertainty of the future. He just wanted to create something that talked about being in the moment, being present, and that was exactly what this album was supposed to convey, and it did. It did a successful job at doing what it was meant to do, and so it was called D-Day. And D-Day basically stands for, you know, that moment, that day when he has accepted the past, that day when he has, you know, given up all the regrets and resolved all the conflicts, and he's ready to, you know, be himself, to be happy, to let go of everything that hurts him, and to embrace himself for what he is and love himself for that. So it's a very I would say crucial, in a sense, part of this trilogy, because it brings everything to this moment right now. Him as a 30-year-old, him who has been in this industry for 10 years, and him who has fought alongside his, you know, brothers and gotten to the top, and now, you know, doing all of these things, all of these achievements. He is now ready to accept all of that, and he's ready to move forward without looking back, without thinking of the past, without being held back by all those intrusive thoughts, all those negative thoughts that kept him shackled, that made every single thing so difficult. He wants to make life easier for himself. And I love that. I feel like I'm going to be very emotional in this, episode as I go forward talking about the album itself, because this album, you gotta take a deep breath before you even listen to it. Because listening to it is an experience, but reading the lyrics and watching the MVs and then connecting all of that to the journey that Agust D has had, that Yoongi has had, and then making sense of all of that, will it's gonna affect you. It's very impactful. It was kind of hard at times, and it was liberating at times, and it was beautiful. It was a very, very beautiful experience on a whole, and I loved it, and I'm ready to dive right in with you guys. I literally just spent 30 minutes talking about Agust D's previous works because I really wanted to kind of give you an overview of what this album was. You truly, truly need to listen to the previous mixtapes before you can even understand or acknowledge the actual significance of this album. Anyway, so this album consists of 10 songs, and they are in this order. We have D-Day, then we have Higum, which is the title track, then we have Huh, which features J-Hope, Hobby, then we have Amygdala, and we're going to talk about that one. We're going to have a very, very, detailed talk about that one. Then we have SDL, then we have People Part 2, which features IU, then we have Polar Night, then we have Interlude, Dawn, then we have Snooze, which features Sakamoto and Wusung from The Rose, and then the last one is Life Goes On, which is, as you probably already know, a song by BTS, but this is a reinterpretation of that song in Yoongi's perspective. So that's the 10 songs, and they all, how would I put it? They all create this magic that is this album, and let's get, talking about it one by one. Before I go on and explain the songs and what I felt about them and everything, I want to leave this quote by Yoongi about the album, and he said that, "Until now, I have only made albums out of my personal trauma or anger, but I think this album is what I organized my pieces from a more mature point of view. And in a way, I'm completely liberated from these negative feelings. A lot of people can't focus on the present because they are ashamed of the past and feel afraid of the future. Therefore, these are songs that have the message about focusing on the present." Right, so this is Yoongi's first solo album in Chapter 2, and actually his first solo album as Min Yoongi, as an artist, I guess. He's released some, mixtapes before, like we've talked about, and he's already worked on BTS albums, of course, composed and written lyrics and rapped and all of that, but for him, this is particularly, just him, a solo work, and for that I'm so excited to talk about this because, he's talked about it. A lot of, the other members, obviously, who have already released solo works have talked about this because, but the fact is that working on solo, projects after you've worked on, group projects for so long, it's kind of hard because, as you work together, you kind of rely on each other and take up different jobs, and you just know what to expect, what to do. But, there was this live that Namjoon did a while ago, and he was talking about working on his solo project, and he was talking about how he has to do everything by himself, and it's, sometimes you feel like he doesn't know what he's doing because he's forgotten a lot of stuff and he has to go back and start from scratch. So it's probably been a very different experience. And luckily, Yoongi made it easier for us because not only did he release a full album, he also released a documentary which basically encompassed the process of making this album, and just him showing us sort of like an insight into his workspace and how he likes to work and all of that. And it's available on Disney Plus if you want to watch it, if you haven't watched it. And it's a really nice sort of like an insight, sort of like glimpse into Min Yoongi's world, and seeing music from his perspective and watching him work in real time, in front of the camera, and just him being very casual and very open and very very vulnerable. It's there's this clip that has been going around on Twitter a lot, which is basically him being frustrated with something he was working on, and he just keeps swearing. It's so funny because like it's a 40-second clip and all he does is swear, and you could tell, like, I laughed over it, like a lot of armies laugh about it, but you know it also, when you think about it, the process of making that music, making this albums, the behind the scenes of all these tracks and things that we see, the end results of, obviously, they can be very ugly, they can be very frustrating, and we don't get to see that. We just know, we have a countdown, we get the track list, we get the concept photos, we get the MV, and we get the music, but we don't get to see the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it. And Yoongi basically gave us that side of making this whole album as well, and which was amazing, which was a very genius move, and as expected from Yoongi, because this man, if there's one thing that this man always, always, always has been very open and vocal about, it's the fact that it's not, as shiny and bright and glamorous as we think it to be. He's always talked about the struggles. He's always talked about, the things that go on behind the scenes, and he's always been very honest and very vocal, and has always emphasized on what kind of sacrifice it takes to be here. And just him acknowledging that, just him checking his privilege, and always, always, always reminding everybody that whatever they do, comes with consequences. Whatever they do, like he said in his song, that with dreams as collaterals, he has always talked about the bad side of being an idol as well. And I love him for that. I love him for, creating a platform, for giving other artists this idea that it's okay for them to talk about it. Because a lot of times we see that idols are guilt tripped into thinking that they shouldn't be complaining, they shouldn't be talking, about the bad things that happen to them, because, oh, you're famous, you have a lot of money, you get to be on TV, you get to do all these shows, you get to travel the world. So what? I mean, if you're hurting, if something is not right, you should at least have the space to talk about it. You should have the courage to, voice it. And that is why I love Min Yoongi so much. That is why I love BTS so much, because they've always been open about these things, and they've always had a very healthy sort of relationship with their fans, where we're not living in this bubble thinking that, oh, these are unreal men, and, they don't have feelings or whatever, like they're unreachable. It's actually the opposite. For us, they're as real as any human being could be. And the access we have to them and their emotions and their feelings, it's crazy. I've never seen, an artist and a fan have this sort of relationship. So it's really fun to kind of like, go on this journey with Yoongi for this album particularly. So this album is a lot of things. It has hip hop, it has trap flow. So it's an amalgamation of a lot of different genres that Yoongi has experimented with and incorporated into his works, just to bring about a flow, a story, to build this world, and to bring this world to a completion now, I should say, because this is the last of the trilogy, and we've already talked about the previous two mixtapes and what this stood for. And we've talked about the fact that this album was more about liberating. This was about, coming to a conclusion, coming to the end, to, I would not say like the end, because this also means a beginning for him, because, him accepting himself, his past self, and trying to move on also means that he's opening a door to, a better world, a brighter world. And for that, I'm so happy, right? But mostly, what he wanted to convey with this album was the idea to live for the now, in the present. And he has conveyed it in such a beautiful way. The tracklist itself has been, made to kind of fit this storyline. You look like a plot. You start with D-Day and then you end with Life Goes On, and we're going to talk about it in a second. But the way the tracks are placed are actually, for a reason particularly, and we're going to talk about it. But I just love how Yoongi always has a purpose for every song that he puts in his album. Like the way he curates this album, it's art in itself, and I love that. So when I first heard the album, I heard the whole thing at once and back to back. Like, yeah, from D-Day to Life Goes On, I did not pause at all because it was such an experience. Like, you go from one song to the other, and it's so naturally, like, connected, all of it. It's so organically connected together that you just kind of, find yourself enjoying each song. And then by the time it finishes, you're ready for the new one, a new experience. And that's how it all goes. But then obviously I had to sort of calm myself down after I listened to it the first time, and then go and listen to it again. And then, because listening to BTS music is always a process, okay? So the first song on the list is D-Day, and it's a very impactful song in the sense that it starts off with like this distorted guitar sound, and then bam, Yoongi starts, and like right off the bat he goes, "Future's gonna be okay. Okay, okay, look at the mirror, and I see no pain. I'd die for real till the D-Day, but it's gonna be okay." And you have to pause, like right off the bat, you have to pause and acknowledge that he is basically, in a way, declaring that it's high time that I stop thinking about how the past has, been so painful. And he's proclaiming that no matter what happens, it's gonna be okay. And that, saying that, just being able to say it out loud like that, is him completing that journey. Later in the song, he says, "D-Day is coming, it's a fucking good day. It's like walking through a maze for this day. Maybe the stupid past is over now. Let's toast again to us who will be reborn in a world full of hate." And it's so crazy to think that, Agust D, the persona that we know, that we've watched for the past few years, evolve and understand and come to terms with this anger, this built up frustration, this resentment that he had towards the world, and to finally say that whatever happened is in the past and we're gonna be reborn. This is high time that we let go of all of that. And just a positive perspective of the song, the positivity that he seems to be talking about in this song sets like this tone for the rest of the album and signifies what the album is about, D-Day itself. And that was beautiful. I feel like the message of the song was beautiful, and I really loved the vibe of this song. I love the song, and I listen to it so much. Like, I'm literally listening to it all the time these days. So, yeah. Alright, Hagum. Where do I even start? We have Hagum and Lee, which is the official music video. Then we have a live clip, which is part of the, little clips that he filmed for D-Day documentary. And that one is actually, I feel like, much more impactful for me because it also included him singing it live. Also, they had actual Hagum instruments, like a band playing Hagum, the traditional Korean instrument, in the back, and it just sounded so beautiful. I don't know, it felt very, very very cool to me. But anyways, the MV. So, what is this song about? Hagum means to lift a ban, and in Korean. So basically, the song is a little slap in the face of everybody. I feel like a reality check for a lot of us. And it has a very heavy hip hop vibe to it, and it's beautiful. It's like, I think I heard that this was initially supposed to be the beat for the Ichwita, but he probably didn't do it for some reason. And Hagum was actually planned when he wrote the storyboard for the Ichwita. So this was a long time coming, basically. So it's a continuation of the Ichwita. If you have watched the MV, you would know that it's a continuation, and it's really amazing. The storyline, everything. So basically, this was filmed in Thailand, right? The music video, and it follows the story of this evil, guy who is in the police department. Okay, and he's a bad guy. He's in power, and he's cocky, and he thinks that he owns the world. The way he walks, the way he talks, he's got like a whole mafia, looking out for him. And then there's this other Yoongi, which both of them have a scar, but the other Yoongi has like a milder one, and it's almost healed. So basically, it's him again fighting his own persona, his evil persona, basically. And so what happens is that you follow him into this restaurant, little restaurant with like 6 other guys. It's very important, the fact that his little gang consists of 7 people, and he grabs like these random red chopsticks from a customer who's just minding his own business, eating his food, and then he goes upstairs and then he literally stabs a dude with those chopsticks. I like, when I saw the trailer, I kid you not, I screamed. Like, the sound that came out of me is between me and God. I cannot express how terrified I was at that point, because Min Yoongi deserves an Oscar just for that teaser, okay? The way they filmed it, the way his expressions, the way the hair worked out for him in that particular scene. Oh my god. If you haven't watched the MV, you need to go watch it now, because goodness, it still terrifies. It gives me goosebumps even now thinking about it. And then basically we see that the mafia is actually not working for him, the bad dude, the one in the police department, but the other guy, the chopstick guy. And so he basically spins this entire thing where he lets this bad guy think that he's got the power, but he gets kidnapped and he steals his money and everything. But at the end, when it's time for him to die, the mafia people, they basically hand him the gun. Somehow he gets the gun, and he instead ends up killing that evil dude. That's the interpretation I have of the MV, right? So it's basically the fact that, for me, what it meant was the fact that we give power to these people, these evil people, because we let them be. We let them think that they have the power over us. They have the power to do whatever they want, and we let them control us. We let them trap us. And that was very significant for me, because the song itself talks about liberation. It talks about how we are chained by these societal expectations and these restrictions, and this online culture, and this in this world of constant information just bombarding all over the place, and being so stimulated all the time that we kind of don't understand what is going on, right? And there's this particular lyrics from this song where it goes like, freedom of expression could be reason for somebody's death. Could you still consider that freedom? And I had to pause. Honestly, I think everybody paused, because whoa. I mean, it's one thing to talk about, being free from these expectations and, not letting people restrict us. But it's another thing for you to also look at the other side and understand that having this freedom comes with a responsibility. And recently, in K-pop industry particularly, we've seen a lot of stuff, bad negative things happen in the past week even, and on stan Twitter especially, with armies and other fandoms just like, fighting it out, and it's just been ugly. So all this hate, all this violence that we see on Twitter these days, and just everything that was happening in the past, it sure makes you think that, some people don't deserve to have this freedom. Just because you have the freedom of speech doesn't mean that you get to be rude, that you get to talk bad about people, to make them feel bad about themselves, or say things that could hurt somebody so much that it could become a life and death matter. So a lot of times we don't understand the weight of our words. And there was this particular scene in this MV where Yoongi comes out after he's killed, this dude with chopsticks, and he lights up a cigarette and he takes a puff. And as expected, the world just kind of went crazy over this. And my Twitter timeline was like all over the place talking about him smoking. And with armies, it's funny because we have a very dark sense of humor, I would like to say, because everybody was all about like, oh my god, he looks so hot smoking. And I was just like, this dude just killed a man with chopsticks. And nobody cares about that. But everybody's like, oh my god, he looks so hot, smoking. It's like, oh my god, armies have their priorities all wrong. We need to reevaluate our lives. But anyways, that was funny. Anyways, so basically the idea of him doing that was basically he expressed that in his life as well. It was the fact that he knew that this was going to become a hot topic because he smoked, and oh my god, he's an idol and he smoked, blah blah blah. And basically the fact that no matter what he does, just because he is in that position where everybody around him is scrutinizing his every move, no matter what he does, he's always going to get talked about, and people are always going to make a big deal out of the smallest things, whereas the things that actually need to be talked about, or things that need attention, nobody pays attention to them. Nobody wants to talk about those things. He also talks about how in today's world we're all somehow entrapped in this toxic cycle of just being trapped, by one thing or another. He says that, we are slaves to either capitalism or to money or to hatred and prejudice or, flexing. And it's so true. It's so true that, we don't realize it. People got mad at him for talking about it. They were like, he belongs to hype and, one of the biggest pop stars in the world and he has so much money. How dare he talk about that? And like, dude, this man started from the bottom. Nothing that he has today was handed to him in a silver platter. All that he has, all that fame, all this, these opportunities, all these achievements, he's worked damn hard for them. So I guess he, of all people, gets to talk about these things. He gets to point out the bad things in this industry, in the society, because he's been dealt that hand. And he is a victim to this. And we all are, we all somehow contribute to this cycle, to this slavery of, capitalism, this chase for money. We give value to these things. So does that mean we don't talk about them? Does that mean that we don't acknowledge it? No, the fact that he acknowledged it is in itself such a great thing, because it opens up doors for debate. It opens up doors for people to acknowledge and realize that these things are real, and no matter what part of society you are, what status you have in society, it affects everybody. And so it's a debate, it's an open debate that everybody can take part in and should take part in. The third song, I'm not gonna lie, had me in tears just because of the thought that it's a feature, and it features none other than our very own J-Hope from BTS, his soulmate, as I like to call him. and this song is called Huh. It was very funny when Namjoon said this in Shotrita. He's like, Huh. That's not how he pronounced it, but I'm pretty sure that it's Huh. It's like simply Huh. Hobie does it better, whatever. So this song is basically, a song that comes full circle again with Agust D's signature vibe, and it has that uncontained rage. And at the same time, though, it has that sense of release in it as well, because there's this line where he says that yes, the internet world and the reality are quite different. Live your life. And then he goes on and says that if reality is the gutter, get out of it. I pray that even you do well. And that is in contrast to, Agust D, where he basically wishes everybody to just, combust on the spot. That's Agust D's personality. He was full of rage. He was full of, contempt. He was full of resentment towards the society and what it had done, and the industry for always snubbing him and always hating on him and always trying to make him feel inferior. But this song is Yoongi, Agust D, as a more healed and mature version of himself, who is still angry, who is still, not over things that are going on. He's not okay with how things work, but he also understands, the other side. He also wants to, keep in mind the perspective of the other side and acknowledge that they're doing this because they've been conditioned to feel like that, because it's a cutthroat industry, it's a cutthroat world, it's survival of the fittest. Sometimes that pressure can turn you into a monster, and sometimes these things can lead you to do unimaginable, unspeakable things that you would not otherwise be doing. So this is him telling these people to acknowledge their environment and understand that if they're being toxic, they need to get out of that space. They need to change their environment. They need to work on themselves. And at the end, he also wishes for them to do better. And that is a big moment for Agust D, because, for him to not necessarily forgive, but to come to an understanding and, try and be that bigger person was beautiful to watch. I feel like, this track really was a coming full circle moment. Again, all of this album is, I would say, but this particularly. And then Hobie's verse. I also heard that this is like a drill rap sort of thing. I'm not sure how that technically works, but Yoongi said that he actually hounded Hobie to write the rap for this beat. And at first Hobie was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do good, but then he encouraged him, and Hobie wrote the verse, and he said that he approved it in one go, which was, a very emotional, sentimental moment for me, because soulmates, sometimes you don't understand the scope. Like, in a room full of rappers, Yoongi choosing J-Hope because he knows that he's comfortable working with him, he knows what to expect from Hobie, and he knows that he can deliver, what he expects. That confidence, it's just BTS. Like, that bonding, that expectation, that just, it's beautiful, and it just makes me giddy to think that Soap worked together on this. And I really, really wished that we could have gotten at least one live performance of it, but I guess we gotta wait for that to happen. The next song. I need to take a moment before I start talking about this song, because I have not stopped crying since I watched this MV. Like, I've been finding random moments to just think back on this MV and cry. Yes, there is an MV, and the song itself is, I think, to date, the darkest, the most vulnerable, the most raw song that Yoongi has put out. He has bared his soul. He has bared himself. It's like, reading the darkest, the most, private thoughts of a person. And knowing Yoongi, knowing how he's always been so open about these things, even for him, it came as a surprise to me for him to really, say all of these things. And for that, I respect him so much, so much. Because not only did he, vocalize all these things, because I feel like he felt as a person to be in a position where he could talk about these things. Because talking about traumas is hard. If you've been through, something like that, a dark time, you know that bringing that up and talking about it, and especially in front of the entire world, it's gotta take a lot of guts for him to do that. I feel happy that he's in a position where he thought that that was okay for him to do, but also the fact that it opened up so many different, doors for people to come forward and talk about their problems. It's always about that little bit of strength that you can provide somebody for them to just, fly, to be the best version of themselves, to bring that change that they'd always wanted. And this song, I guess, was it for so many people. And I can attest to that because I feel like I felt seen, I felt represented. It was like somebody had taken the words out of my heart, out of my mouth, out of my brain, and just written them into a song and then, made a music video about it. Because even though our traumas, our stories are different, but the essence of it all is the same. And that makes me so emotional. I'm gonna start crying again. I don't wanna cry. Don't cry, Rosie. Just the idea that, I'm not the only person who has gone through these things. It's so comforting. I can't even express. This definitely is a start track for me. It's a it's a very vulnerable insight into Yoongi's life. The human, the 20-something Yoongi, the 28-something Yoongi, the 30-something Yoongi. And he talks about all the things that, not all the things, but a lot of things that he's been keeping to himself all this time. And he talks about his mom's surgery after he was born. He talks about his father's liver diagnosis, cancer diagnosis, and he talks about the accident that he got into when he was young and that resulted in his shoulder injury. And all of that, must have been so much, so traumatic for him. And for him to finally talk about that and say that all of these things were never ending trials that, weren't able to kill him. And then he goes and says that, and I bloom a lotus flower again. And the significance of a lotus flower is that it grows in mud, it grows in, very dirty conditions. And that just makes so much sense over here because a lot of these things that he went through, obviously, nobody deserves to go through them, and my heart hurts for him. But I also feel so proud that he's overcome all of that. And he is a lotus flower for real. All the struggles that he has faced as an artist, as a son, as, a member of BTS, it's been a lot. And the fact that even through all of this, he has not lost that, sense of just being, just existing for music, his love for music, his passion for music. It warms my heart because, when you compare this to So Far Away and you see the helplessness and the hopelessness that he had, where he thought that he doesn't even have a dream at this point. And now for him to come and say that, all those troubles, all those things, all those dark thoughts, they were not able to consume him. And that he feels like he's okay now. He's blooming. That is so heartwarming. And the music video, I'm not going to talk about it because I'm probably going to start crying, but it was heavy. It was very heavy. And I've only watched it once. Not gonna lie, I couldn't go back to it just because it was just too much. It was very triggering for me, but it's beautiful the way he has portrayed the whole thing, where he's sitting in this room, darkened room, and there's this door, you know, at a few steps away, but he can't reach it. And he keeps getting these intrusive thoughts. And over here, we also get to see the actual origin of Agust D, that dark persona, how it came to be after going through all these trials and tribulations. He just couldn't help it. He didn't know if there was an end to this. He didn't know that, there would be better days in the future. And all those thoughts, those intrusive thoughts, those dark thoughts led him to try to find a relief, try to channel that, depression, that anger, that desperation, that, frustration. And he gave himself that scar. And he made that persona of himself. That was very significant and beautiful to watch, actually. There's a scene where his past self and his present self are trying to open that door, and they just can't seem to do it. It struck a chord within me, because, for some reason, I have a similar sort of, thing in my head where I went through some very traumatic stuff in my life, and my life seemed to be divided, between time before that and time after that. And for a long time, I felt like me as a person were two different people, from before this incident happened and after that incident happened. And I just couldn't find any ground of reconciliation between these two identities. And I sometimes would refer to myself in third person, thinking that I'm a completely different person, because I'm not the person that I was before this thing happened to me. And for him to show those two personas, his past self and his present self, try to come together and try to unlock that door, so that he could know, his past self could know that, his future self is better, and there, and it's not all dark, that it's not all gonna end. That was so comforting. Like, I just sat and just imagined doing that to myself, like, going back in time and telling the little me that it's gonna be okay. It was a lot. And I feel like this music video was the highlight for me, this entire album. I think if I were to take away one thing and keep it with me for the rest of my life, it would be this music video. Even though I can't watch it because it's just so triggering for me, I still feel like it's beautiful. And Yoongi being that vulnerable, I want to thank him if I could. Like, it must have taken a lot to bare his soul to us, and I'm so thankful that he did. The next two tracks we have are STL and People Part 2. It's a sequel to People, which is on D2, which is the second, of the trilogy. And it's all about, ruminating and introspection and nostalgia, and, about relationships and, connection between people. And the song also has a music video, and it has a feature, which is IU. And I've loved their previous work together. They've done a collaboration on IU's song called 8. It's also one of those very nostalgic songs talking about life and, a friend that they've lost, and, them living on this island and just never leaving it because, just taking a trip down memory lane because that's all they've left of each other. And this song also is something about loss and sadness, and it talks about, what makes loss so sad. And he says that it's the dread that makes us so sad. It's the dread of losing, of not being able to be with, this person, of, having this loss itself is actually what makes us so sad. And there was this one, teacher that said something to me when I was young and in school. And she told me that we don't cry for the people that are gone, for their lives, and for what they could have had or what they could have been. We cry for us. We cry for ourselves who will not have this person anymore. And we cry for ourselves for the loss, for the things that we are being deprived of, the emotions, the connection. And that rings very true. And listening to this song, Yoongi said that, at the end of this music video, he talked about the song and he said that he wrote it during the pandemic and, when he was going through the time where he thought that he'd lost it all and, he thought that everything was just over. And he said that he wrote the song to tell himself that, it's okay and that things would get better and it's okay to cry. It's okay to, acknowledge these feelings and to, just let it out, sometimes. And that was beautiful. I feel like the song is very, very meaningful. It's definitely a meaningful song. There's other lyrics from the song which goes like, selflessness can actually be selfish too. It's true. It's actually my greed when I say that it's all for you. Will I be happy if I give up my greed? A half illusion that never will be fulfilled. That's very heavy. That was heavy, and it's true, isn't it? Being selfless, being, giving up is also kind of selfish, isn't it? If you think about it, selfish towards yourself, who deserves to be happy, who deserves to, have something, and we want to do something for somebody else and we're like giving up, and then we always think that in return we expect them to acknowledge that, to, put us on some sort of pedestal for giving up or for, surrendering. And in that sense, it's selfish. We're doing it because we want acknowledgement for it, and it's the greed that being selfless would bring something, because sometimes we hear a lot that, if you're a good person, you were promised heaven. If you're a good person, it's gonna come back twice, twofold. And all that sounds good, but, doing that just for the sake of having a reward, that's selfish, isn't it? And I think the star lyrics of this album for me is that he says in the song, they say life is a struggle between resistance and submission. I say it's a struggle against loneliness. Min Yoongi and his lyricism. You guys can never, I don't know how to even go about explaining this or talking about it, because it just hits you, his lyrics just hit you. They leave you a different person. You are not the same once you listen to this album, because the introspection that he forces you to go through, the, literal crisis that he kind of brings with this, like existential crisis that you go through while listening to this album, is, I think, a good thing in a way, but also, like, I don't want to cry. I don't want to think about these things. I just want to be happy. I want to, like, talk about you being cute and, being a cat in an alternate universe, and just how much I love all 7 of you being together. I just want to talk about that. I don't want to think about, loss and sadness and, loneliness and what that means and all these complicated emotions. Like, this guy puts you through all of them, doesn't he? But all for good, I guess. He's a genius. What can I say? Okay, so next up, we have a Polar Night. And that song also follows the theme of Hagum, which talks about basically the biasness of the society that we live in. And the fact that everybody has a truth, and everybody has a reality, and everybody has a narrative. And they're only going to accept your narrative if it fits theirs. And they're only going to accept the truth that, somehow makes sense to them. And otherwise, it's all bullshit, okay? And that's so true. That is so true. Like, having a normal debate these days is impossible. Like, having a, intellectual conversation is hard because everybody's trying to just impose their own views. And I'm not saying everybody does that. I'm not trying to generalize. I'm sorry if that came out like that, but I mean that a lot of times we have these conversations, we've met these people, we know these sort of people, okay? So he's very honest, like he always is. That's just his MO, okay? Yoongi just, slapping you straight on the face with these lyrics, like throwing a brick at you, basically. That's his way of reality checks. It's like, he's very honest, brutally honest with all these things. It's like right in your face, and I love that. So he goes like, if you're not on my side, you're all my enemies. Duh. And then he goes like, an extreme choice to become. Political correction is also my cup of tea. Keep your mouth shut about troublesome problems, selective hypocrisy, and uncomfortable attitude. That interpretation that only suits my mood. And I had to like pause and be like, damn, you did not just say that, because, whoa, I could smell the smoke coming off of different people's brains listening to that, because that probably hit home for a lot of people, and a lot of people felt called out. And I saw a lot of comments on Twitter where people were like, how dare he say that, how dare he call me out like that, because that's true. And a lot of people would not acknowledge that, and I think that's a you problem if you don't acknowledge this, but this is so true. A lot of us are expecting everybody to sort of conform to our narrative, and if you don't, then you're the enemy. And that's sadly how life is. So that's Polar Night for you. I mean, I thought it would be like a, soft song, like something of a, ballad type song, which can't expect a ballad from Yoongi yet. He's gone up a notch on the vocalist line, but actually, while I'm recording this, he's actually doing a concert right now in New York. His first solo concert is happening right now, and so I saw some clips of him on, the sound check, and he was singing. This man, main vocalist Min Yoongi, guys. So I'm pretty excited, but I don't know, for some reason I expected this to be a ballad sort of thing. I don't know why, but it's so stupid of me, I know, right? People probably are rolling their eyes at me like, Rosie, what? But I don't know, it's just Polar Nights, I have no idea. I don't know what else to say about this song, but it's also a good song. A lot of people love this song. For me, I guess it's the fourth or fifth on my list, because I don't know. I'm just, I like to self-sabotage and listen to songs that make me cry a lot and make me have like existential crisis all the time. So all these songs that I've previously talked about that have made me cry are probably the ones on top of my list at this point, even still. The next song we have on the track list is called Snooze, and it has 2 features on it. And I think this is Yoongi's dream come true, like, that ultimate fan moment. He's always been a big fan of the late Sakamoto's music, and he got to meet him, and they got to work on this music, on this track together. And that's his last, song that he worked on before he passed away, unfortunately. So it probably is very special for Yoongi and for a lot of us as well, because just, that interaction that you get to see in, D-Day as well. It was cute. It was so cute, and it's just seeing Yoongi, just achieving all these dreams. It's so heartwarming for me. I don't know how to express that. Just normie thing, just feel happy for them when they achieve something, and because you've seen them struggle and you've seen them work so hard for these moments. So it's always like a beautiful moment to watch that happen. And then he also features Woo-sung from The Rose. And one of my friends, Kaylee, she loves The Rose. She's like always talking about them, and I remember when the track list came out, I told her, I was like, oh my god, the guy from The Rose is on it. And she was so excited for it. And I was like, this is probably, your 2 worlds coming together. Because that's, she likes both BTS and the Rose, and for me, I feel like it would be a Justin BTS collab some days, and that would be my two worlds colliding because that's me. But anyways, so this song, the way this song made me cry too. Like, is there a song on this album that did not make me cry? I think D-Day and Hagum, because I was pumped. I was like hyped. Those songs got me hyped up. Polar Night too, for that reason. I would say her, but then because of Hobie's enlistment and everything, I can't. I'm just too emotional, and it was just too, near the whole two things that happened together. So I hadn't still recovered from Hobie's enlistment, and this album came out, and then I was like devastated. I don't know. Just listening to Hobie, I was like, oh my god, I needed them to do this together. I wanted them to, be on tour together. Anyways, this song, for me, is a full circle. I've said full circle so many times in this entire, episode, but truly this song is full circle for me because it actually features the bridge from So Far Away. And I've probably said this a million times before, but So Far Away is like my song. Like, I don't know, I just feel like that is my song. And when the bridge came up, I was kind of confused for a minute. I was like, what is going on? Like, why does this sound familiar? Like, I was kind of like confused, and then I listened to it, and then it just brought back so many memories, and it made me stop and think, about how far I've come as an ARMY, as the person that I was the first time I heard So Far Away, and now this song. And definitely a D-Day for me. Yoongi said that he wrote this song for, people out there who have been through the same things that he had, especially his, junior artists, and he wanted to sort of give them this platform and the song to ponder and to take courage from. And, in the song he says that pretending that I'm not lonely, pretending that I'm not suffering, needlessly pretending that I'm okay, and pretending hard that I'm strong. I built a wall in front of me, don't come inside. I'm an island in this wide ocean, don't abandon me. All these songs, all these lyrics, they kind of ring true for an artist when you think about how, even though they are surrounded by so many people all the time, there's a constant spotlight on them, there's still this loneliness. There's a wall that they have to build around themselves, because having too much attention, having so many people, can also make you feel lonely, because that's constant stimulus, and so much attention. It can be so draining, and I can't even imagine living a life like that. And it just, I always get emotional thinking about it, because BTS have always been so supportive of their Hubes and their junior artists and people that look up to them, and that is because they've been dealt a very bad hand. It's because of how their seniors treated them when they were starting out, and how they were neglected and made fun of and bullied almost. So, not almost, actually bullied. And going through that experience, they decided that they don't want others to go through that. And that takes a lot of heart to, decide on that, to give up the negative and to focus on the positive, to be like, to break that cycle, because we see that happen so many times, where if a generation goes through something, they get bitter, and they're like, they hold on to those feelings. They're like, if I've been through this, why do they get to be in a better place, the people that come after them? And for me just to break that cycle and want to create a safer and a more, loving environment for their juniors, it's such a beautiful move, and I respect him so much for this. So he said that he wanted artists to listen to the song and get courage and understand that it's okay to feel all of these things. And he validated their emotions and his own emotions, and said that he hopes that they know that it's okay to feel like this. It's okay to ask for help and to express these things. And after what happened recently with Moonbin passing away, these words just somehow ring louder, for all of us. These words ring louder for all of us and make you understand that there's so much, that goes on, and mental health is so important. And no matter who you are, but especially in his, profession where they're constantly dealing with criticism and so much attention, whether it be negative or positive, it can be very draining and it can take a toll. And for that, I feel like it was a very beautiful move on his part. It was a very beautiful gift for his juniors, and I feel like they're blessed to have him as a senior to guide them and to look after them and to always, reach out and try to make them feel like they're included and they're important. And for him to have the power and use that and do it, it just makes it all the more special, because he could, most definitely choose not to. He could just turn a blind eye and be like, whatever, I've made it, I don't care. But instead, he chooses to talk about these things. He chooses to reach out, and that's just beautiful. That's Min Yoongi at his heart, the most sweetest, kindest person, and that is why I love the song so much. And the last song on this album is called Life Goes On. This song is so heartwarming in the sense that it talks about the future. It talks about the fact that the world has evolved, that time flows, but at the same time, it acknowledges the relationship that he has with us, the audience, the armies around the world. For example, in the song, he says, I will borrow this music and give it to you. People say the world has changed. Fortunately, our relationship hasn't changed yet. Let's say goodbye, not bye, hello. Even if the world doesn't go my way, let's count just a few nights as we wish. I'll never forget the day we meet again. And that is coming full circle for me in its truest, most, intimate form, because for us, for them, BTS, for him, Yoongi, for, him as an artist, the world seemed to have stopped when they couldn't be on that stage anymore, when they couldn't do what they were supposed to be doing as musicians, right? Yoongi has said this a lot of times, that what makes an artist going is, performing on a stage, doing concerts. And this is exactly the reason why he chose to do the solo tour, even, because that's where an artist belongs, on the stage. And if that doesn't happen, then what's the point? What's the purpose? And right now he says that it's okay if I can't be on that stage now, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen in the future. So yes, life goes on, but we need to, pray and hope and be positive for things that are coming in the future, instead of being, worried and always looking at the glass half empty. So in a way, that is, I think, the most beautiful way to end this album, to end this trilogy, this chapter. And I feel like the song, placing the song at the end like this, not only signifies, this journey of Agust D and Yoongi himself, but also BTS, because it brings in that aspect of his life as well to, tell us and remind us that at the end of the day, there's 7 of them, they're a team, and whenever it will be possible, they're going to be back for us and we'll get to meet again. Overall, this album was everything that I expected from Min Yoongi, and everything that I expected the last of this trilogy to be like. For him as an artist, for him as a person, for him as, a son and a member of BTS and a musician, this album talks about all the things that he went through, but in the perspective of a man who has gone through all of that, acknowledged it, and is learning to heal from all of it. And that is beautiful. That is very beautiful. And I'm so proud of him. As an army, as a fellow human being, I'm so proud of him, and I feel so encouraged and, just happy in his happiness. And I hope that a lot of other people who listen to this album, who read his lyrics, and who get to know his struggles and his problems would gain some sort of, encouragement and courage to fight for themselves and, to try and heal. Because at the end of the day, it's only you who can do this. It's only you who can, grasp the reins of your life and tell yourself that I have the control and only I can make this work. So I think that's a beautiful message. And for Yoongi to be able to do that, to heal and to not just heal himself, but also reach out a hand for other people who might be going through similar things. It's a beautiful thing. He's so kind. He's so special. I could literally talk about Yoongi and his lyricism for days if I could, because all his songs are just exponential. All of them are significant in one way or another because they all talk about different stories of life, of experiences that we at some point have gone through, all of us, in some way, shape, or form. So, it's just beautiful to be able to connect with an artist like that, where not only are you, listening to their story, but you're also somehow feeling connected because that feels like your own story. And you can interpret it in so many different ways, infer it in different ways and colors, and, it's a beautiful process. So I love Yoongi for this. I love him for his genius mind. I love him for his genius beats and beautiful, beautiful songs. And I just love him for giving us this album. And I'm so, so happy and so excited for him to be on this tour because he gets to finally be with ARMY. And like Namjoon said, that, him doing this tour would give ARMYs the encouragement to wait out until they're all back. And I think that's exactly it, because my timeline right now is chaos and everybody's just like talking about it. The concert is still going on and I'm seeing all these videos and it's just making me giddy. And it's like the pandemic never happened right now, and I love this feeling. I love how normal everything is. People going to the arena, merchandise, and, just meeting up and interacting and not having to think about SOPs and, wearing masks and all of that. It was horrible. God, we lived through that. We survived that somehow. So in a way, this D-Day is D-Day for us as well. We've gone through a lot and it's finally time to move on from that and to get back to life and, move forward. So yeah, that is it, I guess. That is it. That's me talking about this album, and I hope that you could relate to some of it. I want to know what you think of the album if you heard it. What is your favorite song? What do you think about the MVs? And are you streaming? You better be streaming. You better be streaming, okay? It's available on, all the streaming sites that I can think of. I'm like literally so sleepy right now, but it's available on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Amazon Music. It's also available on Pandora. Just, you can find it wherever you want to. It's probably there already. So yeah, listen to it and let me know what you think of this album. And I'll be back with another episode next time. Goodbye. Allah Hafiz.